Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Roswell Sunday book reads. We're doing Skeletons in the Closet. We have been on Zoom for the last few weeks, but we are transitioning back over to Instagram Live. Hopefully, it won't cut us off. Hopefully, we do have, technically, I think over an hour now. At least that's what's been happening on my rewatches. So, this time is a new time. It worked better for our readers who are reading the chapters. So hopefully you can join us. If not, these lives, don't worry, they will be saved on my page, on the Roswell Virtual Party page. They will be saved. They will be uploaded to our YouTube. I do still have to upload last week, which we read chapter 7 through 9 last week. So if you weren't at our Zoom last Sunday, I will be uploading that, and I will be uploading this Instagram Live as well. So I have 2 videos to upload this week. It's just been a bit of a crazy week. So hello to everyone here, and we are having Jess back for her recaps. So that's very exciting. Jess will be here for her recaps as well. So I'm splitting up chapter 10 with Michelle, and then we're going to have Allison pop in for chapter 12, I believe. So chapter 10 is kind of a long one, so me and Michelle are splitting that one up. So I'm going to get her in here. As you know, I'm Christy. I run the page 35. Loveless, Parker, and Max and Liz are my favorites. You know all my favorite couples. All the good conventional ones. So I'm just going to get right to it because we're running a few minutes late getting Michelle in here. Oh, right. Hi, Natalie, Allison, Annabelle. A hot dog. Oh my gosh.
What can you do?
You're all kinds of silly. Okay.
Well, I was going to return it because it seems like a lot.
But why?
Because you can't really tell it's a hot dog.
Promote B&T.
It kind of just looks like, I don't know what it looks like. But we're going to go for it. Hey, Jess, I'm so excited that the book queen is back. There is mustard. Of course you'd ask that, Haley. Of course. No ketchup, though, because we're not heathens.
So are you going to wear that the entire time you're reading?
Well, yeah, it's only 9 pages.
Yeah.
I have multiple hats. I can switch if this is too distracting. You tell me, Haley. Okay.
Okay.
Don't tell me, Haley.
So
hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Platt.
Spinning wheel or anything on my screen because I have it. I have my phone on airplane mode to save battery, and it's on my Wi-Fi. But hopefully, everything will operate fine.
Well, let me turn on the beautifying filter. See, look, now I have makeup on.
Yeah.
Didn't do anything. Christy taught me how to find these filters. I had no clue.
I'm telling you, the filter saved me. I don't have to get ready or anything anymore on Instagram.
Wiggle the wiener. Jess, your mind's in the gutter. It's too much. All right. Are we ready for me to read chapter 10?
Yes. Let's read chapter 10.
I don't know why I was like, you're frozen for me. You had a spinning wheel, but you're back. Oh my gosh, Haley. Yeah, but you're back. It was only for a second.
Well, hold on. Let me get off my Wi-Fi. Just hang on. I think we're back. I think we should be good now.
I think it's because she was switching. Oh, now
yeah, I paused because I was switching. Yes.
Oh, now you're freezing even worse.
No, I am.
Yeah, maybe I should go read outside just in case, or next door at the neighbor's house and take their Wi-Fi. I don't know. I'm kidding.
Wait,
all right, maybe I should just read.
Freezing worse or you're freezing worse?
You are.
That's so weird.
Do you see me freezing at all?
No.
I think Jess said yours paused, or it's paused. Let me move. I'm gonna move.
My Wi-Fi now.
Just in case it's me.
I don't think it's you. It's probably me. Haley said it's all good for her.
It's all good? Okay, then I'll go back.
I know there's a bit of a lag for the people in the chat. There's like a 30-second lag, so I'm waiting to see if...
Okay, I'm just going to go for it.
They're saying it's good. That's both fine. It's good now. See, I was waiting for that 30-second lag because I knew there was going to be that little bit of a lag. So...
Okay, I'm going to start, and then if I start to freeze, scream my name.
Michelle! Okay.
Like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I'll be like, okay. Oh gosh, you keep freezing for me, so I'm terrified. All right, here we go. Chapter 10.
Okay.
Sunset was still a couple of hours away. The evening shift was just settling in when Valenti strode into the reception area. He asked Deputy Blackwood if Sheriff Hansen was in, and wasn't at all surprised. Hold on, my dogs are literally eating something crafty off my floor. Don't eat that. That's not edible. Get out of here. Get out of here. I'll get it later. Okay. Sunset was still a couple of hours away. The evening shift was just settling in when Valenti strode into the reception area. He asked Deputy Blackwood if Sheriff Hansen was in, and wasn't at all surprised to find that his young go-getter replacement was busying himself with the endless minutiae of the job, carrying a thick stack of hard copy files from the records room towards his office. Too bad I never taught that boy to delegate, Valenti thought. Maybe he needs a hobby. Valenti also wasn't surprised at Hansen's scowl when he announced that he wanted to speak to Michael Guerin immediately. I'm not sure that's such a good idea, Jim. Come on, Randy, Valenti said, following Hansen into his office. What possible reason do you have to shut me out, unless you're the one who has something to hide? Plopping the files down on the corner of the desk, Hansen sat behind it and removed his sheriff's hat. Valenti noticed that the younger man was unconsciously squeezing the cowboy-style hat into a pretzel shape before he realized what he was doing and set it aside. All right, Jim, have it your way, Hansen said before leaping forward and pressing the intercom button. Deputy Blackwood, would you escort the Guerin boy to my office? Sure thing, Randy, said the voice on the other end of the line. Perhaps a minute later, Blackwood appeared at the door, a sullen Michael standing at his side. Michael's hands were cuffed before him, and rings of worry darkened his eyes, but his expression remained defiant. Hang in there, Valenti thought as Blackwood returned to the reception area, leaving Michael alone with the two men. Valenti considered how much simpler it would be to exonerate Michael if he could simply come clean about the lad's alien nature. Unfortunately, that simply wasn't an option. This is all going to work out, kid, just as long as you don't let them bait you into saying anything stupid before I can get you a lawyer. You wanted to talk to him? Hansen said, folding his arms and glowering at the boy. Here he is. Thanks, Randy. Now, if we could have a bit of privacy. Shaking his head, Hansen turned toward Valenti. No can do, Jim. Not unless you can show me papers saying you're either his priest, his lawyer, or his legal guardian. Otherwise, whatever you two have to say to each other, you can say in front of me. He paused for a moment, then added, You're not the sheriff anymore, Jim. A snarl on his lips, Michael started to open his mouth, no doubt readying a withering rejoinder for the sheriff. But he stopped when he locked eyes with Valenti. Standing beside the desk where Hansen sat, the ex-sheriff mouthed a silent, Don't tell him anything, to Michael. Hansen, who had been watching Michael, must have seen a flicker of reaction in the boy's face. All right, Hansen said, jerking his head back towards Valenti. He rose, moved to the door, and half opened it. I can't have you two trying to slip each other messages behind my back. Go home, Jim. So Hansen's going to push me, Valenti thought, a tide of anger rising within him. He decided that he had little to lose by pushing back. Damn it, Randy. I taught you everything you know about wearing that badge. Don't get all high hat with me now. Makes you look like Barney Fife. Hansen hooked his thumbs into his leather belt, obviously making a show of placing a hand near his revolver. I asked you nicely, Jim. Don't force me to make it an order. Don't act like this is the gunfight at the OK Corral. I came here to talk to Michael, not to get in a pissing contest over who's in charge around here. I'm the one in charge around here, Hansen growled. Don't forget that. Good night, Jim. Michael was beginning to look uncharacteristically apprehensive. Maybe we ought to try this again tomorrow, he said to Valenti. Shut up, Mr. Guerin, Valenti said, never moving his eyes from Hansen. The grown-ups are talking now, son. Hansen sighed in frustration, throwing up his hands. He had evidently realized that Valenti wasn't going anywhere unless physically coerced. However confident Hansen seemed, Valenti sensed that the young sheriff wasn't willing to go quite that far in butting heads with his old boss. I don't get it, Jim. Why do you keep walking through fire for these damned kids? You've already lost your career over them. How much further are you going to go with this? Valenti smiled grimly, but said nothing. As far as I have to, I suppose, he thought. The office door, which had stood ajar, suddenly opened completely. Blackwood stood in the hallway, flanked by Isabel Evans and a dark-complected, well-dressed, briefcase-toting young man. Valenti thought he'd seen him around town, but couldn't quite place him. But the young man's attire and manner said lawyer quite clearly. So somebody's already found Michael an attorney. Good. That's one more thing I can scratch off today's to-do list. What the hell is it now, Owen? Hansen snapped, plainly annoyed by the intrusion. Valenti smiled wryly as he watched his successor's fit of temper. Keeping one's cool, he knew, was an integral part of a sheriff's job. The kid'll get the hang of it eventually. Look how far he's already come. More visitors for the prisoner, Blackwood said, scowling. Valenti assumed that the big deputy would call his boss on the carpet later for barking at him when no one was around to listen. Blackwood had always been a gentle soul, but he'd never suffered either fools or unfairness gladly, and it wasn't a good idea to get on his bad side, even if you were the boss. Valenti knew that Randy would apologize for his gaffe sooner or later. The well-dressed young man stepped forward into the office and shook Hansen's hand. Good evening, Sheriff. I'm Jesse Ramirez from the Evans Law Office. I'll be advocating on behalf of Mr. Guerin. Does this mean I finally get to talk now? Michael said, scratching his face. The handcuffs made the maneuver awkward. Valenti glared at him. No, he said in unison with both Ramirez and Isabel. Do you have a room where I can speak with my client? Ramirez asked, hefting his small briefcase. Hansen nodded, quickly recovering his composure. Deputy Blackwood will show you to one of the conference rooms. Ramirez and Isabel started to follow Blackwood back to the hallway when Hansen stopped them. Wait 1 minute, miss. You're Isabel Evans, aren't you? One of Michael's school friends? Yes, that's right, she said, clutching her legal pad before her. I have no problem letting Mr. Ramirez have a private interview with the prisoner, Hansen said. But I'm going to have to ask you to wait outside, miss. Isabel frowned, holding up a pad. My father won't be very happy if you inconvenience Mr. Ramirez. He's not here to take down all his own notes. Time is money, Ramirez said, flashing a disarming smile. That's why Philip Evans loaned me one of his best paralegals to take Michael Guerin's deposition. Valenti couldn't quite stifle a smile as he watched a curses, foiled again, expression crumple across Hansen's brow. Michael exchanged a quick grin with Isabel. Hansen evidently caught some of the nonverbal byplay out of the corner of his eye. He was unamused. All right, go swear out your deposition. Thank you, Sheriff, Ramirez said. Blackwood escorted him, Isabel, and Michael out into the hall. Hansen closed the door, then walked over to Valenti. The young sheriff's brow remained furrowed. I know you're convinced that the Guerin boy is innocent, Jim, in spite of the fact that this is his third arrest, I might add. He's a misunderstood kid, Randy. He's had a hotter life than most. Every one of his previous arrests has been tossed out, and he's certainly no killer. Hansen folded his arms and leaned against his desk. So you've been saying all along. But for an innocent man, don't you think he's lawyered up kind of fast? His jaw muscles working involuntarily, Valenti left Hansen's office without responding. How the hell can they keep me here? Michael said, rage seething in his guts. He leaned backward in his chair, rubbing at his wrists, which chafed slightly where the handcuffs had been before Blackwood had removed them. All I know about my useless late foster dad was that he ran away from home. Good riddance. Apparently he vanished at about the same time you moved out of his trailer and became legally emancipated minor, Ramirez said. He sat on the other side of a long wooden table whose top was scarred by years of use. Seated beside him, Isabel scribbled notes on her pad while Ramirez's small tape machine quietly recorded the proceedings. This guy doesn't like me, Michael thought, looking Ramirez up and down. The young lawyer's fine wool suit immediately put him on edge, a reminder of all the privileges he'd have to do without throughout his young life. He might have taken me on as a charity case to make Isabel happy, but he still thinks I'm some sort of guilty until proven innocent lowlife. What are you saying? Michael said. That they're right? That I killed Hank Whitmore? Ramirez stroked his smooth chin thoughtfully. His tone was infuriatingly calm. Did you? Jesse, Isabel said. Her pen clattered to the tabletop. I'm only asking the kind of questions he's going to hear in front of the grand jury, Isabel. He'd better get used to it right now. Michael stood up, fighting down an urge to kick Ramirez's two perfect teeth down his throat. That's it. You're fired. Thank you for coming. I'll take my chances with the public defender's office. Sit down, Ramirez said, his easy manner giving way to a hard tone of authority. I'm not the one accusing you here. The state of New Mexico is, and based on circumstantial evidence and your past record, you may have more than a little explaining to do. Michael remained standing, eyeing the Tony lawyer suspiciously. What's in it for you? Ramirez smiled, displaying his two even, two white teeth. Michael wondered how much he'd paid to get them to look that way. Besides fortune and glory, listen, kid, I don't know much more about you than what I read in your previous arrest reports and what Isabel told me about you during the drive over. She says that Whitmore used to beat you up. Michael scowled at Isabel. Thanks for the character testimony, Is. Now they'll throw away the key. She stuck out her tongue at him and resumed jotting down notes. I want to help you, Michael, Ramirez continued. I used to work as an intern in the public defender's office. I've seen what a crapshoot indigent clients get. Michael interrupted him. Who are you calling indigent? I hope that's the right word. His hands clenched into fist unconsciously. I have a job and an apartment. Ramirez didn't miss a beat. Face reality, Michael. You're not exactly society page material, even by trailer park standards. But Isabel is a pretty good judge of character, and if she says you're not guilty, then that's good enough for me. For her sake, I'm not going to leave your fate in the hands of some underpaid, overworked, and possibly alcoholic PD who just might end up sleeping through your trial. My God, he thinks this is going to trial. Michael could feel the alien energies beginning to build up deep within his chest, unbidden. With supreme effort of will, he forced them down, but his anger and frustration continued to smolder just below the surface. He desperately wanted to blast something apart. Isabel must have sensed his interior struggle. Please, Michael, she said, looking up for her pad with pleading eyes. Take a deep breath and sit down before you keel over from testosterone poisoning. We're both trying to help you. Michael began to realize that Ramirez was right. He couldn't afford to hire a decent lawyer on his own. He could barely afford to pay his rent on what he made flipping burgers at the crash town. He had even been considering taking a second job. He decided to accept his best hope of getting out of this was to trust this smarmy young lawyer. He said, though he remained unable to force the sullen expression from his face. All right, what do you need me to do? All right, Ramirez says. We need to account for your whereabouts right before, during, and after the time Sheriff Valenti said he'd seen Whitmore for the last time. I spent a lot of time working at the crash down and hanging around with Maria, Max, Isabel, Liz, Kyle, and Alex. He can't hang out with himself, can he? Ramirez said. The usual suspects, always thick as thieves. I can see I've got my work cut out for me. Isabel shot a sour look in Ramirez's direction and then looked at Michael squarely in the eye. What can you tell us about Hank Whitmore's disappearance, Michael? Pretty much nothing, Michael said, shaking his head. I spent part of those last few days with your dad doing the paperwork to get myself legally emancipated, and I had to get busy searching for an apartment. So you had to remove your things from Whitmore's trailer into your new place, Ramirez said. Did you see your foster at all during this time? No, and after I was emancipated, I never saw Hammer and Hank again. When I dropped by the trailer to pick up my stuff, I figured he'd just gone off on another bender. But I guess he was already gone by then. Or maybe he was even already dead already. Ramirez rose to his feet, then shut off the recorder. All right, Michael, I'm beginning to think that we got a good chance of getting these charges summarily dismissed at your hearing tomorrow. Unless somebody's found the proverbial smoking gun lying right next to Whitmore's body. But I think I'd already know about that if anyone had. Michael and Isabel also rose. So what am I supposed to do between now and the hearing? Do, Ramirez says as he pocketed the recorder back into the briefcase. Nothing, and be quiet. In other words, Isabel said, don't say anything stupid, and for Pete's sake, don't do anything stupid. Michael smiled wryly. Right. If I used my powers to blow a hole in my cell and escape, I guess I'd look pretty guilty. Aloud, he said, it's hard to just sit here while the real killers could still be running around out there somewhere.
Ramirez looked imploringly heavenward, shaking his head. You've watched too many reruns of The Fugitive. Looking Michael straight in the eye, he said, You need to worry about not doing anything to make your situation any worse than it already is, Mr. Guerin. Let somebody else worry about catching the one-armed man, okay? Isabel nodded in agreement. Besides, I'm not sure we're completely positive that Whitmore was murdered. Couldn't he have died in an accident of some kind? Michael scowled. Sure. First, his Coleman stove accidentally burns him to crispy critters while he's camping. Then he accidentally buries himself. Sheriff Hansen told me the body turned up in a shallow grave out in the desert someplace, burned up like it had been in a fire. Guess he was trying to Dennis Franz a confession out of me. Ramirez blanched, evidently unaware of the grisly details of Whitmore's death. Wuss, Michael thought. So somebody really did kill him, Isabel said, evidently thinking aloud. It's just a matter of finding out who. And I've got a pretty good idea who it is, Michael thought, or who it was. But there was no way to give voice to his growing suspicion, not with Ramirez in the room. Then an inspiration seized him. Drawing a single quick breath, Michael covered his nose and mouth, went into a theatrical-looking wind-up, and issued a loud fake sneeze. Say-do. That's what he said, right? That's weird, he says then to sneeze. Locking eyes with Isabel, Michael saw that she understood his meaning. Nacedo, the late shapeshifter, could have used his powers to fry Whitmore, no doubt to protect him from the drunken fool's recurrent fits of rage. Bless you, Isabel said, just before they exited the room. Blackmore immediately returned, cuffed him, then escorted him back to the dingy little jail cell. There he removed the cuffs and left Michael alone with his thoughts. Try to keep them pleasant, Michael told himself, sitting on one of the cell's two lumpy cots. Watching the shadows of the bars gradually lengthen across the floor as the afternoon wore on towards evening, he felt grateful that he didn't yet have to share the place with a roommate. Yeah, think pleasant thoughts. He looked down at his hands and tried not to blow any holes in the walls. As Isabel headed across the station's parking lot with Jesse toward his car, a familiar vehicle pulled into a parking space beside them. Dad, said Isabel, overjoyed to see Bill Evans stepping out of the car, still wearing his golf pants and polo shirt. She could see the bag of golf clubs lying askew across the back seat, obviously placed there in haste. I came as soon as I got your message about Michael, Mr. Evans said to Isabel. At that moment, Max's Chevy roared into the lot, coming to a crooked stop 2 spaces away from Evans' car. Max and Maria jumped out and ran to join the group. Easy there, Racer X, Isabel said. Sorry it took us so long, Max said. Maria needed to spend some time shouting at the skies and breaking things before I'd risk getting into a car with her. Maria glowered. Watch it, Buster. I might not be through breaking things yet. Where's Liz? Isabel wondered aloud. Somebody had to hold down the fort back at the crash down, Maria said. Isabel noticed only then that Maria hadn't taken the time to change out of her garnished lime green waitress outfit. The spring-mounted alien antenna dingle balls that completed her costume bobbled back and forth over her head whenever she spoke or moved. Taking Isabel aside for a moment, Max whispered, Jim Valenti left me a message a few hours ago about a body Hansen dug up out in the desert, and Maria said that Hansen's deputies picked up Michael and accused him of murdering Hank Whitmore. That can't be a coincidence. It's not, Isabel said. Now we just need to figure out what to do about it. Valenti thinks Nacedo might have been involved in the murder, Max said, his voice still pitched only for Isabel's ears. Isabel nodded. That's what Michael thinks too. It's the only explanation that makes any sense. Max leaned in closer, obviously not wanting to be overheard. Something else important has come up too. Liz and I have just come across a lead on finding Tess's genetic template. Isabel's mind whirled. The human abductee who supplied Tess's DNA? That's what we think. We're leaving tonight to track her down. She might be able to lead us to our genetic templates. I've called Kyle already and he's coming with me. We'll need your help too to see whether or not this woman is the real deal. She started the test. Max. We have to talk to her, he interrupted. We have to learn whatever she might remember about her abduction. We have to find out what she knows. She's a genetics researcher. Max, Michael is in real trouble. You can't just bail on him to chase Tess. Max made a sour face. I'm not bailing, Isabel, and I'm not chasing Tess. Maria and I rushed right over here just as soon as we could. But once we're done rescuing Michael, again, we need to head over for Santa Fe to find this woman. Max, you're not being fair to Michael. This arrest was no more his fault than having that creep Hank Whitmore for a foster father was. Max looked exasperated. Fine. Isabel, this woman in Santa Fe could provide a key to finding out literally everything we don't know yet about our past. He trailed off, his eyes unfocused as he stared off into the cloudless sky. Isabel saw the look of longing in her brother's dark eyes. He honestly felt a desperate need to unravel the mystery of their origins. She couldn't deny that she often felt the same need as well. All right, Max, she said, I'm in. I have some dinner plans, though, so I'd like to leave a little later on this evening, if that's okay with you. But let's take first things first, okay? Placing her hand on Max's arm, Isabel propelled him back towards their father. Moving close to Jesse, Isabel saw that her father was speaking to him. She also noticed that Jesse appeared to be taking great care not to touch her, even by accident. Maria appeared to be listening closely to the conversation between the lawyers, while patiently shifting her weight from foot to foot. How bad does Michael's situation really look, Jesse? Mr. Evans asked. Jesse absently drummed on his briefcase as he answered. There are pluses and minuses here. In the plus column, Hansen doesn't seem to have a shred of hard evidence placing Michael near the scene of the crime. On the minus side, Whitmore used to use the kid for a punching bag, and his only alibi comes from a handful of teenagers who a judge might think are lying to protect him. He looked around at everyone assembled before adding, no offense. Mr. Evans nodded, weighing the younger lawyer's words. So Michael appears to have an excellent motive for killing Whitmore, at least on paper. Isabel couldn't believe what she was hearing. Daddy, what are you saying? You can't honestly believe that Michael would... Her father interrupted her, placing a calming arm around her shoulder. Honey, I never would have helped Michael get emancipated if I judged him capable of committing murder. I know he didn't do it, she said. Tears pulled in her eyes. I'll vouch for him too, Maria said. She still seemed oblivious to the antenna projecting from her forehead, which described incredibly complex patterns in the air if she spoke and gesticulated. That's a weird word. Michael might be hot-headed, impulsive, insensitive, emotionally tone-deaf, and possibly the worst boyfriend ever to drag his knuckles through the hollowed halls of West Roswell High, but he's no murderer. What Maria said, Max said. All right, Mr. Evans said, smiling wryly, but that boy could run up some pretty princely legal bills before this business is finished. I've already offered to handle the case on a pro bono basis, sir, said Jesse, exchanging a quick smile with Isabel, entirely on my own time if necessary. No, Mr. Evans said. No? Isabel said. Her heart sank. Maria looked like she was about to detonate. Max watched quietly. I said no, and I meant no. The Evans Law Office is taking the case pro bono. Mr. Evans shook Jesse's hand. Every resource you might need for this case will be at your disposal, counselor. I'll stand behind you completely. Full faith and credit and all that. Thank you, Daddy, Isabel said, hugging her father tightly. Yes, Maria said, piling onto the hug. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Lots of thank yous. Kids need air. Philip Evans gasped. Isabel released her grip and took a step back, smiling at her father, who was feigning strangulation in Maria's grateful, octopus-like embrace. Suddenly self-conscious, Maria backed away as well. Then she grabbed the senior lawyer's hand, pumping it up and down like a farmer trying to get water out of a cistern. The antenna dingle balls atop her head continued to dance crazily to and fro. Jesse watched, his eyes spinning like tiny pinwheels. I've really got to talk that girl into switching to decaf, Isabel thought. How could they hold him without any real evidence? Max asked, pulling the antenna from Maria's head and then handing them back to her without so much as glancing in her direction. Mr. Evans sighed wearily. I called Sheriff Hansen on the way over. I admit he's a little overeager, but he really believes he has probable cause to hold Michael. But Michael's completely innocent, Isabel said. Twisting her amputated antenna nervously in her hands, Maria jumped in. And contrary to all his press, he is very fragile emotionally. A night in jail is a trauma he shouldn't have to endure right now. She paused, looking sheepish. Another night in jail, I mean. Looking glum, Mr. Evans turned towards Isabel. Hansen says he thinks Michael will skip town if he sets the boy free. He's determined to hang on to him until tomorrow's hearing in Judge Lewis's courtroom, and I don't think anything short of an order from Lewis himself will change the sheriff's mind. Lewis, great, the hanging judge, complained Maria. He's the guy who chopped Sheriff Valenti's head off last year. The soul of compassion. He's got a sign on his bench that says cruel, but fair. I've known Judge Lewis for 20 years, Mr. Evans said, chuckling. He's a good man and an even-tempered jurist. Michael won't run, Max said. I can guarantee it. Jesse shook his head. He's left town suddenly before. Why are you so sure he'll stay put this time? Because if he was going to run away, he'd already have blasted his way out of the cell by now, Isabel thought. She observed that Max appeared to be thinking the same thing. I just am, he said. Me too, Maria said. I'll quote you chapter and verse on why I think so if you'd like. In fact, that's okay, Mr. Evans said, splaying his hands out before him as though warding off an attack. Really? Isabel looked imploringly in her father's direction. You believe Michael is innocent, don't you? Mr. Evans didn't hesitate. Of course I do, honey, but that might not be enough. Isabel wasn't about to give up so easily. There has to be something you can do to get Michael out of jail today. Mr. Evans paused, evidently considering his options. Then he kissed his adopted daughter on the forehead and pulled his cell phone from his belt. I hope you haven't made any plans for this evening, Jessie, he said, as he began keying in a number. Jessie looked at Isabel helplessly. No. Why? Crap, Isabel thought. So much for an intimate dinner together at Hazel's Cajun. Because, Evans said, we're both going to pay Sheriff Hansen a visit, and I think we're going to have to do a bit of paperwork while we're there. Why? Jessie asked, nonplussed. Because Hansen's about to receive an urgent request from a certain highly influential, cruel but fair jurist. Mr. Evans held the phone up to his ear. Judge Lewis, Philip Evans here. I have a personal favor to ask of you.
Christy, before you move on, the next chapter is 15 pages, and then the one after that is 8. I just didn't know how much over an hour it lets us go. So did you want to let Allie in here in case you wanted to split the next chapter with her? Thoughts?
I don't know. It's a good question.
That way, if you get tired, you can switch to Allie. Because chapter 12 is only like 7 pages.
I could probably power through in the next 15 minutes. I mean, it's been giving us over an hour for the rewatches, so I'm hoping it does the same today.
Let's let Allie pop in here just in case.
Okay.
You want to switch, and you don't have to like pause mid-sentence and then switch us. This is a good switching point.
That sounds like a good
Allie,
idea.
Allie, can you hear us? I know, I'm like a Beyonce when I sing. Okay.
Yeah, Allie, if you're ready. I think she's got her book with her, so get Allie in here and see if she's ready. Yeah, she said she'll do it. Okay. If we do end up splitting up.
Hey, guys. I'm just
Hey. Hey.
So am I
I
reading
could
now?
probably power through, and hopefully it won't cut us off after an hour, but it would give us that countdown if it was going to cut us off, so hopefully. So, yeah. 105 to 1 something.
Do you want me to start reading? Or are you still reading?
How about you read for the end of 113, and then I'll come on 114.
So 105 to 113?
Yeah.
Okay.
105 to 113.
Oh, okay. Let me just let my phone up like this so people can see me. Okay. Chapter 11. About 90 minutes after Philip Evans had placed his phone call to Judge Lewis, Maria was running, holding Michael's hand, pulling him along behind her. She enjoyed a heady thrill of triumph as she bounded across her driveway, past the spot where Liz had left Maria's Jetta parked. The car made slight pinging sounds as its engine slowly cooled to match the temperature of the warm, early evening air. Dusk was gathering quickly. Maria sailed through the front door. A sulky Michael stole in tow. Lucy, I'm home. As she'd expected, Liz Parker was already inside waiting for her, sitting on the sofa, leafing through a magazine. Unlike Maria, Liz had already doffed her lime green crash-down uniform in favor of jeans and a loose white cotton blouse, no doubt having run up to her little flat above the restaurant before driving Maria's car over to the house. So was this a jailbreak, Liz said, her facing brimming with happiness? Or did you just sweet talk Sheriff Hansen into letting Michael out? You didn't give me a lot of the details when you called. It was Max's dad, Michael said, sounding considerably less happy than Liz. He was the one who rescued me. Maria thought the phrase "this time" was hanging unuttered in the air, completing Michael's sentence as he lapsed into a sullen silence. Seeing that her half-alien boyfriend's monosyllabic storytelling technique wasn't satisfying Liz, Maria jumped in. Mr. Evans called in some favors to spring Michael. It turns out that he and Judge Lewis are old friends, so Michael is free until his hearing tomorrow. Maria looked expectantly toward Michael. As long as you don't get picked up for anything else in the meantime. I promised Deputy Dog I'd stay out of trouble, Michael said, sounding miffed. And I will. Care to discuss the trouble you're already in, Space Boy? Said Maria. It occurred to her that she'd been made aware of very little about the case, other than Hanson's suspicions that Michael might have caused the death of Hank Whitmore. There's nothing to discuss, he said, folding his arms, his bangs half covering his eyes. Hanson's just assumed the worst about me, the way people around here generally do. The fact that none of it's true doesn't seem to matter much. Again, par for the course. She took his hand, partly to provide comfort and partly to forestall yet another woe is me Michael pity party. We'll straighten it all out tomorrow at the hearing. Michael looked like he wanted to smash something, but appeared to be restraining himself, just barely, to avoid enraging Maria's mom, Amy. Maria knew that there were some perils that not even the commanding general of the armed forces of the planet, Antar, would willingly risk facing. Judge Lewis, Michael said with a defeated sigh. Great. I should save everybody some time and go get measured for my orange jumpsuit right now. Maria made a show of looking at her watch, then shook her head theatrically at Michael. Sorry, Michael, all the haberdasheries are closed at this hour. Lewis evidently believed in you enough to go to bat for you with Hanson, Liz said. Mr. Evans couldn't have forced it on him, even if they are old friends, so maybe the hearing won't go as badly as you think. Michael didn't appear convinced. Maybe, but I find that when I count on not getting cut any slack, I'm usually not disappointed. Michael, I would bet real money that Eeyore was your favorite Winnie the Pooh character, Maria said. He snorted. Eeyore was the only pragmatic realist in the entire 100-acre wood. Let's hear it for the power of positive thinking, Maria thought with a mental shrug. Oh, well, Michael will be Michael. If you're really that worried about Judge Lewis not treating you fairly, Liz said, then why don't you try to even the odds a little? Michael frowned. What do you mean? Liz went to the couch and took her cell phone from her purse. Let's talk to somebody who has some first-hand experience with the judge, Liz said. Jim Valenti, Maria said, instantly understanding Liz's plan. Michael shook his head. Lewis is the one who suspended Valenti as sheriff. If not for him, the city council might never have voted to give him the boot. Exactly, Maria said. And that experience probably gave Valenti all sorts of insights into Lewis's legal mind. A real peek beneath the robe, so to speak. Great, Michael said. There's an image that'll haunt me in the middle of the night. It might keep your mind off jail, Liz said, studying Michael's pouting profile. She walked away and had a brief conversation with Valenti. Speaking to Maria, Liz said, I just told Valenti that Michael's over here and that he could use a strategy session for tomorrow's hearing. You mean Inquisition, Michael interrupted. Whatever, said Liz, casting an exasperated look at Michael. Anyway, he's on his way over now to help us make our game plan for tomorrow. Good, Maria said to Liz. I've just got to believe that Michael's release is a good omen. I admit I wasn't sure it was actually going to work, asking Judge Lewis to lean on Hanson to free Michael. I don't think I really believed Mr. Evans had pulled it off until we all were piling into Max's car out in the parking lot. Liz brightened. Max brought you home? Yeah, Maria said. Uh-oh. Because of Michael's dismal record of pulling unexpected disappearing acts, Maria understood exactly how Liz felt. If Max drove you home, then why didn't he stop in? He must have heard you talking to me on your cell phone, so he knew I was here. You know Max, Maria said, shrugging. Sometimes he can be very focused. The only thing I can't quite figure out is exactly what he's focused on this time. She looked to Michael, her eyebrows rising. Michael looked uncomfortable and appeared to be considering what he was going to say very carefully. At length, he said, Max and Isabel had some urgent business to take care of. Maria nodded knowingly. Urgent Czechoslovakian business. No comment, Michael said, then turned to Stone. Liz turned on Michael. Where did they go, she said, a small burr of anger texturing her usually smooth voice. They went north, Michael said, after a pause. His expression still guarded. Where north? Santa Fe. Watching the stubborn set of Michael's jaw, Maria sighed and shook her head. Better get out the rubber hose and the thumb screws, Liz. Otherwise, you're only going to get his name, rank, and serial number. Liz's brow furrowed. Santa Fe, but Max and I were going to go to the movies tonight. Not anymore, Michael said. Maria thought he looked nearly as unhappy as Liz did. Maria offered Liz a sympathetic look. I'm sorry, sweetie, she said, before turning toward Michael and throwing her arms around him. And I hereby take back everything I ever said about you being the world's worst significant other, Space Boy. Thanks, I think. Michael gave her a perfunctory squeeze, then disengaged himself from the embrace. He seemed to be withdrawing into one of his sullen, I really don't want to be touched right now moods. Without bothering to ask Maria's permission, he flopped onto the couch, picked up the TV remote, and started surfing the channels. His finger came to rest just as a blue-faced Mel Gibson led a ragtag Scots army into a bloody battle against the English. Maria took a step back and studied Michael's tormented expression. A realization suddenly came to her. I think I get it now, Michael. You're disappointed because you have to stay here with me. What you really wanted to do was go with Max and Isabel to Santa Fe. Before Michael could respond, Liz smacked herself on the forehead. Scarston. Gesundheit, Maria said. No, Jolene Scarston. And who, pray tell, is Jolene Scarston? Maria asked. Someone Max and I were researching on the internet earlier today. She's a genetics professor at the University of Santa Fe. Oh, okay, Maria said, still clueless to where this all was headed. So you were cyber-stalking some college professor because... Liz's frown deepened. Because Max thinks she may be the person whose DNA was used to create tests. Maria watched Liz cross to the speakerphone on the coffee table in front of the sofa. Michael looked irritated when Liz got in the way of the screen as she began placing a call on speaker. Max, Liz said moments later, nearly shouting into the speaker, I know you and Isabel are on your way to find this Dr. Scarston person in Santa Fe. I'm here too, said a second fainter male voice on the other end of the line. Maria recognized Kyle Valenti's voice, despite the drone of road noise that competed with it. Upset, Liz didn't bother to acknowledge Kyle. Max, I thought we were going to the movies tonight. Max sounded sheepish. Sorry, Liz, I guess I forgot. Tonight seemed like the best opportunity to head out for Santa Fe, now that everyone's attention is focused on Michael instead of on Isabel and me. Happy to be of help, Maxwell, Michael said wryly, not taking his eyes off the screen. Max continued, we told our parents we were going to a concert and staying in Santa Fe overnight. I guess it's always best to stay as close to the truth as possible when you're lying to parents, Maria said. And I told my dad, Kyle said, evidently having just borrowed the phone from Max, that we were tracking down Tess Harding's human gene donor so we could ask her some questions and maybe settle the basic existential questions of existence for you Pod Squad people. Maria's eyebrows shot up along with the pitch of her voice. You just told him the truth and he was okay with that? Given how many concerts he's seen get out of hand during his years as sheriff, he would have been a lot more worried about me if I'd used Max's cover story. Fair enough, Maria said, remembering a few of her own harrowing mosh pit experiences. I could have helped, Liz said softly, sounding hurt. It must have taken a moment for Kyle to pass the phone back to Max. I didn't want Maria to have to babysit Michael all by herself, Max said after a brief beat. Michael answered that with a loud, long Bronx cheer. Isabel's voice came on the line next. What was that? I couldn't quite make that out. That was Michael, Maria said. He just said he wishes you all luck in getting hold of this Dr. Starsky person. Scarston, Liz corrected. Whatever. Fine, Max. Good luck. Try to stay out of trouble. That goes for all of you, Liz said. Kyle was back on the line a moment later. We're going to interview a little old lady from Santa Fe. Liz, it's not like we're hot on the corpse-strewn trail of Macedo. Maria had to admit that Kyle had a point. The world wasn't entirely populated by men in black or shape-changing alien serial killers. Indiana Jones aside, most university professors weren't the reckless and dangerous types. Liz hung up without bothering to say goodbye. The room was silent except for the television. Liz looked as though she couldn't decide whether she wanted to break something or burst into tears. You okay, Maria asked. I'm fine. No, you're not. Okay, I'm not, but I will be, once I sort out what's going on between me and Max, or whether anything is going on between us, and how mad I'm allowed to get at him until I figure the rest of it out. You want me to keep reading this page, right, Christy? Till 113, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the end of 113. Yeah.
Okay. Max stood her up again, Maria thought, and for Tess, of all the other people in the universe, he could possibly have thrown Liz over for that. That has got to hurt. Knowing there was nothing she could say to comfort her friend, Maria drew Liz into a gentle, sympathetic hug. At that moment, a loud knock sounded on the front door, startling all three of them. Maria opened the door and saw Jim Valenti standing on the porch, his expression serious. She quickly invited him in. Entering, Valenti quickly scanned the living room and said quick hellos to the three teens. Michael offered him a perfunctory wave, though his eyeballs remained enslaved by the tube. Is Amy around? Valenti asked, walking back toward the still open door. He glanced out at the street, looking like a man who thought he was being followed. Not yet, Maria said. She's still at the store. Valenti nodded, looking relieved. He closed the door and walked back to the center of the living room. Well, as long as your mom is elsewhere, that ought to make it easier for us to discuss what we have to discuss. Everyone present knew that Amy DeLuca, Maria's mother and the owner of Roswell's most famous alien-themed gift shop, was no more aware of the Pod Squad's alien origins than Philip and Diane Evans were. Are you ready to start planning for tomorrow's hearing, Michael? Valenti said, or should I just go into the kitchen and make you some popcorn?
Okay. Michael pushed himself into an upright position on the couch, pointed the remote, and killed the TV. I guess I should thank you for trying to help me, he said. Valenti said, probably, but let's take things one step at a time. First, I want to clear the air of one very important thing. All right, Michael said, looking as stoic as ever. I looked at Whitmore's body at the morgue, and from what I saw, I can safely conclude that alien powers killed him. It couldn't have been anything else. I didn't know you were an alien when your stepdad appeared, nor did I know anything about Nasato back then. So I have to start by asking you one question, Michael, and I want you to look me straight in the eye when you answer it. Michael rose to his feet, a lightning storm slowly building up behind his hooded eyes. Valenti stood his ground, his posture relaxed, an island of calm. Liz looked on anxiously. Maria worried that Michael was about to make his problems a whole lot worse. But when Michael spoke, his tone was surprisingly placid. I know what you're going to ask, so ask. All right, Michael, did you kill Hank Whitmore? Michael met Valenti's gaze without flinching. No. Satisfied? As a matter of fact, yes, Valenti said, evidently taking Michael's statement completely at face value. Marie was impressed, though she still feared that Michael might fly off the handle just because Valenti had dared to ask the question. But Michael's anger already seemed to have fizzled, replaced by something that Maria interpreted as a mixture of surprise and gratitude. Thanks, he said, his voice clearly barely above a whisper. Maria thought he might cry. She walked over to Michael and put her arms around him. Thank you, she said. For what? He said, pulling away from her slightly to look her in the eye. For not, zapping your benefactor. Michael looked disappointed. You really thought I'd do that? I thought you might, Maria said, mocked seriously. Whether you really meant to or not. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you before, but you do have a bit of a temper. It's a maturity thing. Well, I guess life in the big house makes you grow up fast, Michael said with a small sidewise smile. Valenti cleared his throat. All right, then. Now that the main issue is settled, let's talk specifically about what we're going to say in Judge Lewis's chambers tomorrow. Valenti focused on Michael. I think we often start with when you last saw Hank Whitmore. Michael nodded. I never saw him again after the night I finally left the old drunk's trailer. Can anybody vouch for that? Max and Liz can. They came to the trailer and saw the old man blow his top, but they also saw me use my powers to stop him from ventilating us with a shotgun. I thought for a moment it would be a good thing to get Max and Isabel to testify at the hearing, but maybe it's a good thing they went out of town with Kyle instead. Liz looked quizzical. Why is that? There's too much they have to hold back. We have to give Judge Lewis clear-cut answers that he can accept, not more questions. And that's going to be hard enough for me to do, given Lewis's attitude towards me, and given that I'm going to be testifying tomorrow. Maria shook her head confused. If Lewis really does have it in for you, then why risk ticking him off anymore by testifying? Valenti gave her a wan smile. Because or was that a wan smile? I don't know. Because I'm Michael's best alibi. Not true, Maria said. Michael spent the entire night with me after he left Whitmore's trailer, and Mom saw us both the next morning in my bedroom. I'll swear to that right in front of God, the President, and Judge Lewis. Valenti shook his head. Not that it would just thrill your mother to all the pieces, wouldn't it? No, I don't want you or your mother dragged any further into this. The step that helps the most has to come from me, since I was the last one to see Whitmore before he left town. Maybe you did, Michael said. Maybe you didn't. Valenti scowled. What do you mean? I mean that the man you saw might not have been Whitmore at all. What if it was really Nasato? He was a shapeshifter after all. What if he'd already killed Hank, then tried to cover it up by letting you think you'd seen him alive afterward? I've suspected Nasato's involvement ever since Hanson's people uncovered the body, Valenti said, nodding. If I could get a look at the body myself, Liz said, it might help to shed some light on that. Marie shook her head. Good plan, Agent Scully. Maybe you should sneak in and perform an autopsy of your own. Then when Hanson catches you at it, he'll conveniently forget all about railroading Michael. Keen. Valenti chuckled. Looking at a scowling Liz, he said, Maria's right. Let's solve one problem before we risk creating another. Besides, I got a pretty good look at Whitmore's remains. It's obvious from the hand-shaped hole buried in the chest that alien powers of some sort were what did him in. And I don't think even you have a way to test for Nasato's fingerprints, Liz. No offense. Fine, Liz said, sounding glum. I withdraw the suggestion. Maria felt a pang of sympathy for her friend. She just wants to help out and keep busy, at least until she can have her showdown with Max. The front door suddenly appeared. Amy DeLuca strode into the living room, looking tired after a long shift at the shop. Goddess, what a terrible day I had. I think she means goodness. That's a typo. Goodness, what a terrible day I had. The liquid incense spilled all over She jerked to a halt, an eager smile jolting the fatigue from her face. Jim, what a surprise! Judging from Valenti's reaction, Maria imagined that his picture must be printed in the dictionary right next to the word awkward. For the past year and a half or so, she'd been aware, sometimes uncomfortably, of her mom's on-again, off-again relationship with Valenti. Just chatting with the kids, Amy, Valenti stammered, and waiting for you. He crossed to Amy and gave her a chapstick kiss on the forehead. Amy beamed and brushed Valenti's hand with her fingertips. Maria's nose wrinkled involuntarily. Addressing Liz and Michael, she said, okay, that's our cue to get out of here. Shall we repair to the crash down where no one indulges in blatant and excessive displays of physical affection? Michael and Liz both made noises of agreement, then trooped towards the door. Maria cast a parting glance over her shoulder as she followed her friends out to the Jetta. Don't do anything I wouldn't. Goodbye, Maria, Amy said. She and Valenti stood looking silently at each other, hands at their sides, their faces both as red as cured hands. I don't even want to think about it, Maria thought as she got in the car. Sitting in an unmarked car across the street and 3 houses away from the DeLuca home, Deputy Owen Blackwood felt a sense of relief that night had finally fallen. Under the cover of darkness, his dirty deeds would be much better concealed. When Hanson had ordered him to keep Valenti under surveillance in the hopes of finding him meeting secretly with Michael Guerin and company, Blackwood had protested invading in his former boss's privacy. But Randy, always the stubborn taskmaster, had insisted. So here I am, Blackwood thought ruefully, chewing the last remnants of a greasy drive-thru hamburger, skulking in the shadows. Blackwood had no doubt that Valenti had spotted the tail immediately. He probably knew exactly who was following him and why, and was obviously smart enough not to let on that. He knew. Jim Valenti was just too experienced in the lawman's craft to be caught unawares like that. Sure do miss the guy. When those city council paper pushers tossed him, Roswell lost the finest damn sheriff it ever had. Crumpling an assortment of papers and napkins into a grease-spattered paper bag, Blackwood saw a sudden flash of motion on the driveway in front of the DeLuca house. 3 teenagers got into a beat-up Jetta and drove away. Blackwood noted that the group had consisted of Michael Guerin, Liz Parker, and Maria DeLuca, the daughter of the owner of record for the car, as he learned a few minutes earlier when he run the license plates through the mobile computer. But there was no sign of Valenti. His truck was still parked at the curbside near a second vehicle that the computer had said was owned by one Amy DeLuca, Maria's mother. Jim's still inside, trying to live his life in peace. But Blackwood had his orders. He picked up the squawk box and thumbed the button. Sheriff Hanson, this is Deputy Blackwood. Hanson here, report, Deputy. Why can't he just call me Owen, the way Jim always did? Heaving a great sigh of resignation, Blackwood went into the church Joe Friday mode that Hanson seemed to like so much. Jim Valenti is still inside the DeLuca house, Sheriff, with Marie DeLuca's mother, one Amy DeLuca. I just observed Mr. Guerin leaving the premises, along with Marie DeLuca and Elizabeth Parker. Despite his affection for Valenti, even Blackwood had to admit that meeting with Michael Guerin barely an hour after Hanson had reluctantly released him from jail looked a little fishy. Good work, Deputy. Blackwood was getting fidgety and wasn't feeling terribly good about himself. He failed to keep the acid from his stomach entirely out of his voice when he replied, Thanks, fearless leader. Who do you want me to spy on next? Unsurprisingly, Hanson seemed oblivious. Get back to the station, Deputy Blackwood. Starting the car, Blackwood said, 10-4, Sheriff, then what? There was a brief crackle of static as Blackwood drove off. Then nothing, Hanson said. I think I'm going to have to bring in some bigger guns to find out what's really going on between Jim Valenti and those kids. All right. That's chapter 11.
Are we doing 12?
Well, see, I'm debating with that because I do have to be somewhere in an hour. So, I mean, it is only like 8 more pages, but then I'm also wondering if Instagram is going to give me the countdown in like 4 or 5 minutes.
Okay, it's up to you. I mean, I can read it or we can wait.
Why don't you just go ahead and read it and then
we'll
see. And if something happens, and if there's a countdown, I'll be like, Allison, stop.
Okay.
Because I think we can get
All right,
through
let me set
it
this down.
quickly.
Okay, chapter 12. Zan could feel the air as the Kisters glided over the sea. The cool blue water reached toward the horizon, reflecting the trio of moons which had just begun to rise. He looked down at the beach and saw three people, two women and a man, disrobing at the water's edge. One of the women splashed into the water first, but it rolled in heavier waves, not giving the salty spray he remembered from. Where was it he remembered it from? Few people knew of his retreat here. He preferred to keep it that way. His duties kept him busy enough that he almost never had time to himself. Enjoying an evening of peace and solitude under the moonlight would allow him to better deal with the building conflict among the system's faction leaders. Tomorrow would be a decisive day, not only for Antar, but for all 5 of the worlds under his rule. He chewed a piece of rural grass as he watched the trio of lovers frolic in the surf. They had to be a unit. Their attentions and affections toward one another were too familiar to imply otherwise. It made him smile. He and Ava had been like that once, before the crushing weight of his duties began to wear at their relationship, just as it wore at his energy and, recently, his soul. He stood and removed his shirt, his long hair ruffling in the wind. The cool breeze played on his skin, and the energy from his body gave it a slight glow. The water looks inviting, he thought. I have time for a brief swim before I have to be back. Pain suddenly lanced into him from behind, and Zan felt himself teetering. He fell forward onto his hands and knees, barely able to keep his weight from crashing off the ledge and tumbling down the rocks to the sea. As he turned, he put a hand up to his chest where something wet was dripping. Behind him, standing in the shadows of the cave entrance that led to his secret retreat, were 2 figures. One of them stepped out of the shadows, and he saw his attacker. Kivar stooped and grabbed Zan's discarded shirt, using it to wipe the king's blood off the weapon in his hands. Zan tried to say something, but no sound would leave his mouth. He removed his hand from his chest and saw blood on it. His blood. He reached for Kivar even as the other figure stepped out of the darkness. It was a woman, but her face was shifting and indistinct. It was his sister, Valandra, one moment, his wife, Ava, the next, and then an almond-eyed, black-haired girl with silver antennae bobbing from atop her head. From underneath the cloak of the woman emerged a blue, gelatinous liquid, and even as it poured across the ground, coming toward him, as if with a purpose, it began to form the shape of an infant. The babe crawled toward him, its head overly large, its large oval eyes black as midnight pools. He could see his own face reflected in those eyes, shock, terror, and wonder all etched in his features. Wordlessly, Kivar stepped over to Zan, Kivar's cloak sweeping over the baby, and he bent down. One strong hand, its fingers greenish and overly long, gripped Zan's neck, and he felt himself being lifted off the ground. He stared into the eyes of his assailant and was astonished to see Kivar's features change as well. He was no longer Kivar, but Wrath, then no longer but an older man, creases lining his face, then no longer the man but a boy, his dark hair short, his ears protruding on either side of his head. And then the Kivar Wrath man boy pushed him backward, and Zan could feel the electricity out in the air again, could see the moons above him as he tumbled downward. His entry into the ocean was not painful. Indeed, the water received him like a lover embracing him. The thickness of the sea surrounded him, encased him. He used all his strength to push at it, dimly aware of a need to break the surface, to find another ship, to get his son back from Tess, to let Liz know how much he loved her. His strength was almost gone, but it was enough to bring him to the surface. He couldn't see the cliff outcropping from which he had been thrown, but a red light that spelled out the word vacancy with neon tubes flashed at him, winking as if to taunt the dying king. Arms enfolded him from below, and he struggled against them. The water churned, and in the luminescence he saw a girl with short hair, the color of sand. He somehow knew she was Tess, and he tried to scream her name. But as the air escaped his mouth in bubbles, the scream that came out was, Ava! Her hands clutched him again, pulling him down, shaking him, and he lashed out, seeing Tess, seeing Valandra, seeing a baby with dark eyes, seeing 3 pale silver moons in an orange sky. Maxwell, stop it! The sharp voice caught him, and he woke with a start. Groggily, Max realized he was in his car, sleeping stretched out in the back seat, a light jacket thrown over his face. He shook his head to focus and saw Kyle on the driver's side and Isabel on the passenger's side, both staring over the seat at him, concern evident on their faces. Behind them, out the window, he saw a hotel sign for the Silver Trio Inn, a red neon vacancy sign blinking below it. Damn, man, what are you dreaming about? Were you dreaming about? Kyle asked. Sorry, Max muttered, rubbing a hand over his face. Did I? Was I? You were talking in what I'm guessing is Antarian, Isabel said. I recognize some of the names, our names. Max sat up, still groggy. Yeah, weird dream. It was like pieces of my alien memories mixed with parts of my life now. He looked to either side of the car. Are we there yet? We're at the outskirts of Santa Fe, Kyle said. I figured this is where we find the cheaper motels. What time is it? Almost 1 a.m., Isabel answered. We've been driving. Kyle's been driving for the last 4 hours since we took that last rest stop break. Wow, must have really been out of it, Max said, rubbing his eyes. You were fine until about 10 minutes ago, Isabel said, and then you started speaking in tongues and thrashing around. Sorry, Max said sheepishly. I'm going to go in and get us a room, Kyle said. You stay out here, Max. You look terrible. I'll come with you, Isabel said. Kyle nodded. As they walked away from the car toward the motel office, Max struggled to grasp at the remains of his dream. Already it had whispered its way out of his mind, tucking back into his subconscious memories. He couldn't recall any specifics other than the beach, but he knew his chest hurt. Must have been the burrito I had the last time we stopped. The sugar substitute he had sprinkled on it always gave him heartburn. Isabel took the lead as they went into the hotel office. Behind the desk was a 40-ish man with a thick graying mustache and several discreet piercings in his ears. Good evening, he offered. How may I help you? We'd like a room, please, Isabel said, flashing him a killer smile and tossing her hair back over her shoulder with a roll of her head. It didn't have any effect on the man. He looked over at Kyle for a moment and then looked back at her. There's a full convention in town, so all the hotels are pretty much all full up. All we have left is a room with 2 single beds. Is that all right? Sure. Kyle will be sleeping with my brother, and I'll take the second bed. The man visibly brightened and then grinned over at Kyle. Well, in that case, I'll give you a little extra discount on the rate. I like to take care of family. Isabel was momentarily confused and then realized what the desk clerk was saying. Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. She put the room on her credit card and got the keys. Handing one to Kyle, she opened the door for him and turned to the clerk. Thanks again. Thank you, Miss Evans. Have a good night, the man called to Kyle. On their way back to the car, Isabel could no longer stifle her giggles. Kyle stopped and looked at her. What's so funny, and what was all that family stuff about? He thought you were gay, she said, laughing. Kyle was surprised. What? Why? Probably because I said you were sleeping with Max. She laughed again, then added, the reference to family was kind of a code word for one of us. He was gay, too. Kyle said. Well, I hope at least he thought I was cute. Isabel's eyes widened. Well, Mr. Valenti, how progressive of you. He moved over to the driver's side of the car, looking relieved that Max wasn't asleep again in the back seat. Contrary to popular opinions, not all ex-football jocks are homophobes. Some of us, especially those of us who practice Buddhism, might even be a little enlightened as to the diversity present in the world. He opened the door for her, then added one more thought. After all, if I can handle driving around with aliens, I think I can be pretty comfortable with humans of all kinds. Isabel was aware her mouth was hanging slightly open, and she closed it with a snap as she got into the car. Maybe Kyle isn't quite the simple bow hunk he always appears to be. As soon as they got into the room and dropped off their bags, Kyle announced he was going to get some snacks from the vending machine. Isabel waited until he was out of the room, then turned to Max pointedly. What exactly was going on in your dream? You said all of our alien names several times. Max sat down on the edge of the bed, scowling a bit at the too busy green ivy print on the bedspread. I don't remember. It went out of my head almost the moment I woke up. I think I was dreaming about home. You mean Antar? Isabel said, interrupting. Earth is our home. Max sighed heavily. Yes, I mean Antar. Look, I don't want to get into semantic quibbles right now. I'm too tired. She decided to let it go and headed toward the bathroom, carrying her hastily packed amenities bag. Max called after her. You said earlier you were supposed to have dinner with somebody tonight. Anybody I know? None of your business, Max, she said, peering around the door. She saw that Kyle had just walked in. Ooh, that must mean it's serious, Kyle said, throwing a bag of chips and several candy bars down on the tabletop. Deciding to let that comment go by, Isabel closed the bathroom door. Leaning over the sink, she splashed some water on her face and then looked at her reflection in the mirror. It had jarred her to hear Max say the name Valandra while he was dreaming. She still wasn't sure what role she had played during her past on Antar. Was I the loving sister and faithful princess, or did I bring about the downfall of my brother's reign? Of all the royal four, Isabel seemed to connect to her homeworld the least. Unlike Max and Liz and Maria and Michael, she had never let anyone into her soul, so she hadn't shared flashes of her past with anyone, and thus knew virtually nothing about her previous life on Antar. She supposed she could have tried some kind of memory jogging mind meld thing with Tess, given that they both had more highly developed pseudo-psychic abilities than the boys, but in retrospect, she was glad she hadn't. Maybe Jesse will be the one who I share those visions with someday. Maybe he's my soulmate. The thought made her smile. Then the demon of doubt entered her mind, unbidden. Of course, that would mean I have to tell them the truth, and I don't know that Max or Michael would go for that, or if Jesse would, for that matter. She exited the bathroom and saw Max and Kyle sitting on the bed, noshing on candy bars and flipping through TV channels with the remote. Anything good on? She asked. No porn. Kyle said it's days on Showtime. What?
Oh. Uh-oh.
Second.
We lost Allison.
Can you guys hear me?
No?
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
There was
you were
some sort of
spinning for a
connection
little
issue.
bit.
Uh-oh.
So the last thing I heard was no, but Independence Day is on Showtime and Mars Attacks is on HBO. It's freezing for people, though.
Independence. There I go. But is that
Probably
better?
your connection. I think so.
Yeah, I think it is. Okay, now it's back. But Independence Day is on Showtime and Mars Attacks is on HBO. The frown changed to a smirk. So much for my impression that Kyle had evolved. She gave him a pained smile, then grabbed the remote from him, clicking the TV off. I think we'll leave the alien invasions alone for a while. Besides, we need to get some sleep so we can get into the university early in the morning. We don't know what Scarson's office hours are. Kyle turned to Max and pointed at Isabel. Is she always as much of a killjoy? Yep, Max said. Isabel glared at Max as she kicked off her shoes and then set the alarm clock and shut off the overhead light. 7 o'clock is going to come early, boys, she said with an impish glee. She climbed under the covers, turning her back to the boys. Behind her, she heard Kyle sigh heavily and gather up his candy wrappers. If Max goes into another one of his alien nightmares, I'm getting into bed with you, Isabel. Max laughed, but Isabel didn't even turn over to respond. If you climb into bed with me, Kyle, you'll be in an alien nightmare of your own. With that, Isabel tuned out the sounds in the room and willed herself into her own personal world of dreams. She hoped Jesse would be there to greet her. That's it.
Funny.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to save this live just in case. Because I'm worried. I don't want it to cut off or anything. So I'm going to save this one and then we're going to be back and do the recap with Jess.
Okay.
So,
okay. Sounds good.
You keep spinning and having connection issues anyway. So we're going to end it here and we'll be back in a couple minutes with Jess for the recap for about 20 minutes or so. So, bye guys.